What Monster Hunter weapon would you choose to have in real life? This question and other Monster Hunter hypothetical questions on this episode of Hypothetical Questions with the Gray Matters blog with our co-host Hatter, who this episode is actually going to be taking the lead because we're going to be discussing all sorts of Monster Hunter hypothetical questions. And I actually haven't played Monster Hunter, don't know hardly anything about it. Hatter is our resident expert, so he's going to be kind of spearheading this entire project. So Hatter, what hypothetical questions do you have for me today?
Well, we'll start with that one. You've seen the videos, you know what the weapons are, right?
Well, what's really funny is how I know what the weapons are. Because my exposure to Monster Hunter weapons has largely been in the what does your Monster Hunter weapon say about you videos. So I know way more of the memes and the jokes than I do about the actual weapons, but I am 100% prepared to make an uneducated decision based on that alone.
Well, that's the best way to make a decision. At least that's what I've learned in life. I mean, it didn't exactly get me anywhere good, but it's what I did.
Watching most people on the internet, this appears to be the only way to make a decision, is completely uninformed, so I'm running with it. So, okay, mostly what I understand about Monster Hunter weapons is one, hammer go bonk, and I love that. I am very big on very simple but effective, so immediately I'm thinking of that. Then, of course, there's the gun lance, which I like guns, I like lances, I like the idea of just having this ridiculously long rifle that just explodes at things. I don't really know all the jokes and memes about it. I just thought it was a really cool idea of just having this really long spear-like weapon that exploded. I love that. That's just sort of that's my jam. And I know everybody loves the hunting horn guy. That if you play hunting horn, which I am going to go ahead and assume is this giant horn that you hit people with that also plays music that buffs people. That's my assumption, and that it buffs everyone, and thus you're playing the support character, and no one ever wants to play the support characters, and everyone loves the support characters. So on the one hand, there's like, hey, I could automatically be everybody's favorite guy if I played hunting horn. But I'm going to say that in real life, actually, I've even just now changed it because I was about to go back to Hammer Go Bonk and say, look, simple, effective, but actually in real life, the ability to buff everyone around you would probably be the most valuable of all the things they do. So I'm going to go ahead and say hunting horn, probably based on a drastic misunderstanding of what a hunting horn is.
No, you have it about right. It's a big horn that you. So let me tell you a bit of history here. Monster Hunter, when it started off, only had 7 weapons. 6, actually, because you had heavy and light bowgun. They played differently, but it's the same idea. The weapons you had were the Great Sword, you had the Sword and Shield, you had the Hammer, you had the Lance, and you had the large and small bowgun. Remembering things offhand is really, really hard, so I think I did good enough. Wait, no, I did get it right, because in the first game, they didn't have the dual sword yet. That came in the expanded version of the first game. So yeah, you had those 7 weapons. After that, they had weapons that were kind of offshoots of those weapons, despite being their own thing and being completely different. It's like, with the Great Sword, you had the Long Sword. This started in Monster Hunter 2, by the way. With the Hammer, you had the Hunting Horn. And the idea was, it's a hammer that, as you understand, plays musical notes that give your various characters buffs, and otherwise, you just hit your enemies with it. Now, I wouldn't mind being a support character in the game. The only reason I don't use the Hunting Horn is because I don't like the combos and juggling the notes I have to play with my attacks. So, yeah, I would definitely have a Hunting Horn player on my team.
So I'm going to ask your much more informed opinion of what Monster Hunter weapon would you want in real life?
Now here's my question. I'm gonna give you a little power here. Is this a weapon that I would need to be able to use as I am now, or are we assuming that when I get it, I can use it?
We're assuming that Monster Hunter physics logic applies here. Because, I mean, just strictly from a physics, from a equal and opposite reaction, from a balance thing, even those characters, I don't care how strong they are, they could not use the weapons as they exist in the game. So there's definitely magic physics going on here. So we're going to assume you have magic physics too. You're going to assume that the giant hammer, that when you swing it, it actually swings and functions like it does in the game and doesn't just, spin you in the other direction no matter how strong you are. So we're going to assume that they will function as you expect them to do in the game.
Well, I'm gonna say this. My theory on Monster Hunter, I'll be real quick with this, is that the planet is smaller and therefore has less gravity, and that there's more oxygen. There's more oxygen in the atmosphere, and I mean, this is supported. You've got giant bugs, and that can only happen in a low gravity, high oxygen environment. And you jump off these like 3-story things and land like, oh, looks like I fell. So yeah, that's my theory. But If we're assuming I can use the weapon as they do in the game, I'll give you both answers. It's the insect glaive. I'm a heavy person. I'm not a fast person. Even when I get in shape, I'm still going to be a big, heavy person, and I'm working on that. I would love to be able to fly around and jump super high in the air and stuff, because I really can't do that in real life. So that just seems just super cool to me, flying around, smacking them, throwing my giant bug around. But if we're assuming that as I am now, I'm getting this weapon, I'll give you a guess.
I'm going bow gun, I'm assuming,
Well,
judging by the cool arrow.
There's bow gun and there's bow and arrow, and it would be a tough choice between the two. A large bow gun kind of functions like a bolt action rifle, which I'm very good with. Now, the bow functions like a bow, which I'm also very good with, but you're expected to be a little quicker. So probably I'd go with the heavy bow gun. If we're assuming, as I am now, I would get the weapon, but if it functioned like it did in the game, definitely the insect glaive. Flying around just sounds cool.
You know, I am a giant fan of the just trope of the really big guy that is surprisingly more agile than you think. Like, I have always wanted to see, because I've seen a few different, animes and just general fiction where someone has gravity manipulation, but I've never seen them use it the way I want to see it, which is I want to see this giant, hulking, maybe sumo wrestler looking guy who suddenly activates his anti-gravity power. Now he's bouncing around like a pinball. He's, dancing like a ballerina, where he just suddenly is this huge, powerful guy who just gravity ceases to apply to. And I love that idea. So yes, I want to see you flying around with your insect glaive. That is my favorite trope.
Okay, here's my second question about Monster Hunter. Now, throughout the years, strange mechanics have been implemented. Some of them didn't stay, some of them did. But I'm going to give you a few choices here. You can either fight and move in a very grounded way. You could climb up just about anything. You could fall off just about anything. But you don't really have much aerial attack. However, you have excellent dodging. You have great, you can stand your ground. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, but I think you know what I mean. And you're a little slower, but you're more powerful. But here's the other thing. The monsters are also slower. So you're going to have time to figure out how they move and how to dodge them and how to correctly deal with them in time. Your second choice, swimming. You can go into the water. You can stay under for, I think it's like 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And anytime you run into like bubbles or anything like that, your oxygen is going to refill. So you'll be able to also fight monsters underwater. On land, it's basically the same. Except maybe the monsters are a little faster on land than they would have been in the previous scenario. In fact, a good bit faster. But you still have the same basic idea both above and below the water. You don't have as much time to figure your enemy out, but you can figure them out. The third option, more verticality. You can climb anything. You can jump off of things and land perfectly fine. And most importantly, you can land on the monster and try to topple it. And in this scenario, yeah, you can do that. That's not always going to be what you're able to do. But as a bonus, you're faster. Your enemies are faster, but you're more than caught up. As a matter of fact, you're capable of probably slightly more speed than your enemies are in terms of cognitive ability and in terms of ability to react. So, out of these scenarios, which one are you going to pick?
So out of those 3 scenarios you've given me, to me, the most appealing one kind of seems like the first one. And the main reason there being the discrepancy with my enemies. The more time I have to stop and figure it out and think about what I'm going to do ahead of time, the more I'm going to like that. And as you said, I have more and more time in order to figure out exactly how I'm going to defeat this enemy. And I can sit there, as you said, I can dodge, I can block, I can resist being knocked back. And that all buys me more time to figure out how to actually go in when I do go in for the kill to do that successfully. So while they all sound really cool, of course, I would just be racked with anxiety of trying to get to the next bubble. So that one is very unappealing for me. I am definitely going for either of the 1 or 3. And given everything all considered, I want to take my time, figure it out, and then attack. So I'm going with the first option. Which one would you go with, Hatter?
I'm going to actually go for the last one. For similar reasons. Being underwater is cool, but yeah, I would be anxious. And plus, you look out in the distance, you've got this big drop off, and there's who knows what's deep under there. The ocean's terrifying. We all know this. So I don't want to be swimming underwater other than maybe in a creek. Yeah, I don't mind swimming underwater in a creek or a waterway, but by the way, how do you say the word creek?
I say creek. I do have people in my family who would say crick, but I say creek.
Okay, all I wanted to know. But as I mentioned with the insect glaive, it's a power fantasy of mine to be able to move really, really fast. Because, I'm not super unhappy with the way, for example, that I fight and move in the real world, but I don't know what it's like to be able to jump up in the air or do parkour stuff. So I'm going to go with the last one. I'm going to go with the more modern one. All right, I got one more for you. You have a choice. You can live in one of three places. You can live at the top of a mountain. Now, at the top of this mountain, you're safe from most enemies. And, in the Monster Hunter world, there's some pretty big animals there that just kind of do what they want. And, that's not going to be good for you. But at the top of this mountain, you're safe from most of them. Occasionally, you have to fight one off, but that's a small price to pay. You have a small farm here, but occasionally, and actually fairly often, things go into shortage. Your village isn't starving. It's never starved before, but once in a while, you got to kind of have struggle meals. Your second choice, live by the ocean. You have essentially a city on some docks, a village on some docks. You have the endless bounty of the ocean. You have a bustling farm because you're by the ocean. There's plenty of water. There's plenty of sunlight to support the life there. So you have resources here. You have the food from the sea, food from your farm, but there's a very large enemy. There's a very large animal that approaches every so often. Nobody really knows what it is, and they just have to kind of hope things work out. What happens when this thing approaches is earthquakes come. The docks get torn apart. People, unfortunately, get hurt and die. They fall off the docks and get drowned. And it's really, really bad, and it's kind of hard to predict when it's going to happen. Now, I'll reveal to you what it is. In-game, it's something called Ciadius, which is a giant whale-type dragon with big horns, and what it does is it has to shed those horns, so it's pounding against rocks and stuff to break it. But you don't know that. All you know is it's unavoidable. But all year round, you're going to have a bounty of resources. Did I say one of three?
You did, but we can change that to 2 if you want.
It was 2. I don't know why. Legitimately, when I was writing this, it was 2. I don't know why I said 3. But this is a good dichotomy. Which are you gonna pick?
Now, I have kind of 2 minds because my first immediate reaction is to say, "Hey, put me up on the mountain where I don't have to worry about the creatures. We'll worry about how to raise our mountain goats or whatever. We'll figure out how to grow food in the rocks. We'll work this out because I would rather, in this scenario, not have to deal with fighting these monsters." Now, although you mentioned the fact that on the ocean, the main problem isn't so much giant monsters attacking us directly, it's that there is this big waves and this, this basically the problem is that the sea, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but from my perspective, just for some unknown reason, the sea occasionally attacks us.
I will say there are also going to be more monsters because there's more life. There's more things for the monsters to eat. So there are going to be more large animals here, and you are going to have to fight them off more, but it's far from a huge problem. It is an issue, but it's far from a huge problem.
Well, and also, now this is something I do know about the Monster Hunter world, is if you kill monsters, that also means you get valuable monster parts. So that just more goes to our prosperity. So there's that, but, of course, part of me wants to say, hey, I don't want to get attacked by monsters. Hey, I don't want the ocean to try to kill me. But I live on the Texas Gulf Coast. I have actually already picked, weirdly, in real life, I have made this decision because we have hurricanes every hurricane season, and they come through, and there's shit all you can do about it. And we know they're going to happen, and if we see them coming in time, we can run, but that's about it. So weirdly, even though my instinct was to say the mountain, in real life, I picked the sea. So you know what? To heck with it. We'll tie ourselves to some stuff so we don't fall off the docks, and we'll just fight monsters. We'll just get real good at it. We'll get someone with a hunting horn in here. They'll be fine. I choose the ocean just like I did in real life.
Well, I'm sure you probably guessed this. My answer is the opposite for no reason other than I like cold weather. I like when it's nice and cold. And yeah, there is the fact that there's not going to be a lot of monsters. You're going to get a T-Rex. I'll show you what that is later. But, I can survive on as long as there's enough food. And it seems like they always have enough food, but they just have to make some less than ideal choices sometimes for what they're going to eat. I'll be fine. It'll be nice and chilly. I can go, if I really want to, go down the mountain, go to some other village, travel for a while, and get some supplies. Yeah. So, what you chose was Moga Village. That's the village that you go to in Monster Hunter 3 and 3 Ultimate. I chose Poke Village, which is the village from Monster Hunter Freedom, for Monster Hunter Freedom 2, Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter 2, and Monster Hunter 2G. They release expanded versions of the games. This gets a little confusing. But, yeah, that'd be my choice. Now, before that, you had kind of a village in the middle of a forest, and we won't go into what all the villages are, but I always thought it was interesting that in Monster Hunter 2, we had Poke Village, and it was like we just demonstrated the opposite of what the next village would be. I just thought that was cool.
Now, in Monster Hunter, is there a village in the swamp? Because that is technically where I live, is in the middle of a swamp.
Not yet, but there ought to be.
So I fully vote for the next Monster Hunter to be set in the fantasy equivalent of Texas and have Houston Village be the giant coastal swamp.
Now, I'll tell you this. There is always, well, almost always a swamp area in the game. There's a swamp in the first one. In the second one, there's a flooded forest in the third, which is kind of a swamp. 4 kind of had its own thing going on. But yeah, there usually is a swamp-like area. So you do have that.
That's awesome. So, guys, that has been kind of our little adventure into some Monster Hunter hypotheticals. Let us know what your answer to all of these hypotheticals would be. Also, let us know if there's any other specific video games, movies, that sort of thing that you'd like to see us explore hypothetical sets specifically in those things. So, as always, thank you for joining us on this episode of Hypothetical Questions with the Gray Matters blog. Make sure that you follow us, hit the buttons, do all the things. Also, make sure that you're following Hatter over at Save Awesome Studios. I'll make sure everyone's linked below. So, join us next time on the next episode of Hypothetical Questions with the Gray Matters blog.